My name is Neel Bhatia. I'm joined by Johnson Wu. We'll be talking about ISE reports and our real-world use case with this tool. For some clarity here, the session we're going to provide today is not going to go through the complex details of reports. However, the real goal of this is to give you guys a big picture view of what the reports tool is, why we chose to use it for our project, and then in that regard, how did we learn it, how did we choose to use it, and how did we turn it into a dashboard. So that's going to be the agenda for today. We'll give you guys a sort of big picture view of reports in case you are foreign to the tool, and then walk through those agenda items. So let's get started. With a big picture view of IC reports, this is our reporting tool that we provide. We offer it to easily let people create reports, whether it be for sales, really anything that you can report on. It's powered by Logi Report. It is a partnership that we have, which gives us a strong engine for these reports to run on. And it's inbuilt with Iris. So from now on, if you get Iris, it comes along with it. If you have an older Iris version, you can easily get the reports edition from the WRC. Within reports, we have a designer tool for you to go on, create, and as the tool indicates, design the reports. And then you can publish to the server that handles the actual execution of it all. The reports tool, as you will see today, has lots of out-of-the-box sort of pros that make it a very attractive option to use for reports. But with that as well, we have inbuilt security. It supports embedding, which you'll see we used. And so therefore, not only can you use it to make a PDF report or an email report, if you want to make a more interactive dashboard, it does have that utility as well. So a sort of behind the scenes look, just to give you guys a bit more context as to how reports work. As long as you have a Iris instance, it can host your data in there. All you need is a JDBC connection to connect to the reports tool. In there, in the designer, you can design the report, and then you'll publish to the server. So it really is quite simple to use. And the common use cases of reports are really anything that the word report can be used in, so operational reporting, financial reporting, so on and so forth. You'll often see a tool like this be used to generate PDFs, to generate daily emails, for example. In our case, however, we wanted to use that bottom right offer to make custom dashboards. So let's talk a bit about our use case. In our department, we handle the builds. As a result, we have lots of build data that we were interested in getting some reports on. So we wanted to create a website of sorts to display and report build data over time. Notably, we were curious about things like build duration, how builds performed, and we wanted really a tool and a website where we could allow users to interact with this as much as possible. What that meant for us was as many filters as possible, so a user can go on our site and really ask any question and find their answer. So our needs as a result for this project would have been a tool that can handle lots of data, because with our builds and build steps within it, we have a large amount of data and it's only growing. And we need a tool that can easily change. We expected to get a high amount of requests for different types of graphs or reports. So a tool where we can easily make new graphs, easily go back to old graphs and make changes would be ideal. We wanted to be really sure that users can filter easily, as we mentioned, but also export if needed. And so an ideal tool for our project here would easily have these as part of the tool, as well as be easy to do. With that comes fast development, and the results of this would of course be these metrics, these graphs that we want to present to users in an ideally attractive manner that was good in a UI UX format as well. So with these in mind, we began to look into our options, and we had two options. The first one that we're talking about right now is IC reports. Within IC reports, you kind of have to decide what type of report you're making, and it's a very easy choice to make. Depends really on what is your goal here. Because we were going to make a browser-based service, web reports is ideal for us. It is optimized for browser-based work, whereas a page report is more optimized for, as the name implies, things that are more like one-page PDFs. The bottom one there, library components, is also an option if you want to make a component that can be used across different reports. And then so on this front, we had to choose between, okay, we have IC reports. What else exists out there as an option? Well, the real other option for us would be to just pick any sort of front-end library that is tailored towards charts, for example, Chart.js. So we sat down and discussed what are the real options here in terms of comparing these two. Well, the first big difference would be with a front-end library, of course you have control over the UI entirely because you're making it from scratch. However, for our goal, our main objective here was how much can we provide. Our goal was quantity and quality, and so we wanted a tool that would make it easy and fast to develop quickly. And so looking at IC reports, there were some really attractive features. Of course, the graphs being out of the box is amazing, but on top of that, the fact that there'd be no API required, as we saw earlier, is a direct connection from your iris to the tool. So you don't need to build an API, which means that for long-term maintenance and quick development, that's a huge incentive as well. And to already have inbuilt features like exporting is also very attractive. Of course, the other variable to consider is how long does it take to learn. Now, if you are a whiz at using any tool in the front end and you're a professional at this, and you've been doing it for 30 decades, maybe you go ahead and do that. I personally have not. So for me, it was kind of in between, picking between the two. And it became clear to us for our needs, where we want to produce a high volume of graphs and to do it quickly, the reports tool was a wise decision. So with that, we began to learn. And with this, we'll share some of our reflective points as to what we found helpful. Firstly, we provide from the company a course, which the link is there. And as a heads up, if you have the app for this event, you can go to our event, and at the bottom, you can download the PowerPoint. So you can just go ahead and get the links directly if you don't want to write it down. But yeah, so this course that we provide is a fantastic course that I think really helped me get off the ground. It teaches you sort of how to install the tool, how to get things going in a very basic sense. So I'd definitely recommend to start with that course. Once you have your reports up and running, your best friend is the how-to part of reports, which has the guides, tutorials, so on and so forth. Now, to be really upfront and honest, as a learner, I don't usually read much documentation. I just kind of go ahead and try things out. And I would personally recommend, if you are like me in that front, this is a case where using the documentation really comes in helpful. In particular, they do provide on the left a report tutorial. These are fantastic. These take you through sort of mock reports where you kind of learn how to make different types of reports, and you go from 0 to 100 in these. I think this is the perfect way to start your educational experience with reports. And then you can go ahead and play around and do that more experimental learning. And then once you begin actually making your own graphs and you're working with reports for your project, there's also a guide for all the features. This was also our best friend here because when we wanted to add certain features, we could go and find that direct feature on the site and get key info on that feature and learn how to add it. So I definitely recommend to make great use of these guides if you're going to be using reports. So with that, you've learned reports. Let's discuss how we actually got things going. As we mentioned, the first thing you're going to do is connect to your iris. This, again, is just a direct connection via JDBC, and it's quite easy. It takes a minute. You put it in the server. We had to obviously not show that. You hit test, see if it exists, and then you're good to go. After you have that connection, you'll choose which tables from your iris namespace that you want to use. Now, you can choose all of them. I'd say for the sake of clarity and clutter and maintenance and performance, you should probably choose the tables that you need. You can even expand tables, as you can see on the right, and choose the columns that you need if you really know exactly what you require for your use case. And keep in mind, this is not a one-time thing. Inside the designer tool, you can go ahead and make changes to this, which we did a few times as we learned, as we built things to add and things to remove. But definitely keep the space nice and clean. So with that, how do you really create these graphs? Well, firstly, when creating a visualization, you got to choose between using a query or a business view. Queries are the source more for like page reports, I would say. They're more suited for these one question, one answer, whereas a business view is well paired with web reports. They contain some great features built along with it, such as drill down and so on, which you'll see. And when you create the business view, you choose the tables from that connection we made earlier that you want in your business view, and in there you choose your fields. Now, you may notice we do have quite a few fields that we chose here, which have the same name, such as build status, but with different symbols. This comes to a first point of something that you would learn in your journey here, which is very important to organize your data correctly when using reports. And, oh, go next slide. There we go. And these are quite directed by what you're trying to present here. Your options here are either groups, details, or aggregations. Details are the raw data, so if you want to just show it as is, you're going to be picking a detail. Groups we found to be very useful and a tool we use a lot, and this is used for displaying more summaries and grouped calculations. Aggregations, however, we found to have the highest utility for our use case. As a reminder, our use case was build info over time. As a result, we cared about things like averages, max, min. We cared about things that meant we had to aggregate the data over time. And to really make use of this, you also tie it in with something called formulas. So this is really how you can combine and transform your data, and it's very important for aggregations, but also just to manipulate with key things that you want. So if you want to, as we mentioned, averages, standard deviation, and so on, all you have to do is create a formula based with the aggregation that you're working with. And this was a very easy experience. The code that you use here is like English language type code. So it's very easy to make these, which meant that not only is this tool really just for developers, whether you're a PM, developer, or kind of anything in between, it's a very accessible tool for all users. Now, as I mentioned earlier, a big use case as well for our website we wanted was to let users filter and be as interactive with the site as possible. That's where parameters came into play. These are crucial too, as these are pretty much your filters for the user. So to create a filter, it's very easy. You create a parameter. As you can see on the example on the left, we have a parameter for end date. And once you make these, you just apply it to the graph of your choice, and that's about it. Then when a user chooses that filter, it will apply that filter to the graph and will act upon it accordingly. So with this in mind, we had come to a point now where we knew how to organize our information, how to make a graph, how to add it with parameters. So the next step was to use Docker and to get things embedded.
Right, so in the next two slides, I'll be talking a little bit about our deployment strategy with IC reports and how we incorporate that into our existing internal application. So first of all, in our internal tools, we are already running Iris in Docker. So naturally, we will want to have the options to run IC report as Docker as well, and there is. It's very easy. And running things in Docker brings us multiple benefits. And first of all, is it ensures consistency across all of our environments, and normally include development, testing, or staging, and production. And second benefit is that we can actually store the configurations, the settings, and even the reports file into our source control systems like Git. And then when we build the ISC reports image, we kind of package all the settings and configurations in the Docker images, so we don't have to manually configure them after we deploy ISC reports. And finally, that really simplifies our deployment, right? Because we can basically package Iris, ISC reports, and also our front-end application into the same Docker compose file, and then we deploy everything in one command, like Docker compose up, and everything is up and running. So in the diagram down there, you can see that ISC reports server will make a JDBC connection to pull all the data needed to create a charts and graphs from our Iris database. And then our front end will make an API calls to ISC reports to kind of render those charts and graph into our existing React-based application. So in the next page, you can actually see a screenshot on the right that we use the JavaScript API that Logic Reports supports to embed the reports into our React application. And then it's really simple. So all we have to do is to load the JavaScript API into the React runtime, and then we kind of bind the reports onto HTML div elements, and then it just render on the go. We don't have to do anything. That's it. So you can see it fits really well with our React application. And that brings me to our demo.
Sweet. So now we'll talk about, we'll show you guys what we ended up making. So this is a site that we made, as we mentioned at the start, for our use case to show build data over time. The site is divided into 3 tabs with summary, steps, and build specs. So as a user, you can hop onto this site, obviously internal, sorry guys. And as a user, you can go ahead and see already that we've got quite a few different types of graphs and tables. And if a user wants to go ahead and filter, let's say they only care about builds from a certain part of time, they can go ahead and choose those dates. These, of course, come from the parameters that we mentioned earlier, and the graphs around it respond accordingly and quite quickly. Now, we can also tie in something called drill downs, where some tables can drill down into other things. In this example here, a user clicked on a build and it took them to a page about that build. Here they click on a table, on a link that takes them to a page hidden about the averages. Once again, these averages come from the aggregates that we made, and these are useful because for things like average info over time, max and mins, these sort of pages bring great value to our users, and you can go back to the home page. Now, if we went to a page like steps, while it looks like there's a lot more dense data, and there is, from a design standpoint, it wasn't much more work. It's the same principal ideas of having a graph, having your aggregations, and having your parameters. So it really wasn't that much harder, despite there being much more to play with. What comes with these is something like that slider down there, which is fantastic. You want to adjust your view. Once again, a user can very easily go through the parameters to get what they would like to see, whether they're typing or searching or scrolling. These are very interactive. And you can go ahead and you can see that we have quite a few different available for our user here, whether it's from the date to the steps and so on, and these all respond quite quickly. The same goes for something like our build specs here. Do notice that on that table we have quite a few different things provided, such as max and min values and averages. Again, these were very easy to compute using those formulas that are provided in the tool, and again, very English type coding. So all of this allows us to create the use case that we liked, where a user can hop on this site, answer questions that they would like to answer with a high level of interactivity. And from a development point of view, now that we have this up and going, to add a graph, to make changes is nothing more than half a day. So with that, we will leave you guys with some key points of reflection so we can get off to demo and drinks. So our key points of reflection that we'd like to make sure you guys walk away with here is that definitely make use of the documentation. You know, I think for our project, we got to our end goal a bit slower, only because we didn't make use of the documentation that is there. It's very important to understand how to organize, so definitely make sure, and that comes again with reading the documentation. The real value of reports, as you choose to use it, is the out-of-the-box tools here. So as we saw, the graphs are all out of the box, and it's a very accessible tool with a very low amount of code that you'll be experiencing. So whether you're a developer or PM or really anybody, it's very accessible. And for long-term use, I think it's fantastic that there's no API needed, for example. For each graph you want to add with this tool, it's just add the graph and hit publish. If you were going to develop normally, as we all know, you'd be making a new API endpoint, then making the new graph. There's a lot more that needs to be maintained and built. And there's immense value in all that comes with this. And of course, you can choose to embed reports like we did, but that's not the only option. You can go ahead and do page reports, you can do PDFs. There is a long list. And we use containers to make sure that we had fast and easy deployment. The only thing in the future that we'd like to explore perhaps is more UI options. What you saw out there was us doing zero work on the UI, and it looks quite nice already. So that is where things stand as they are. Down there at the bottom, we do have links about the embedding as well as the course. Once again, feel free to download the PowerPoint from the app, so it's easy to access. And with that, we will leave this up here for any questions. Thank you.